The deafening hum of the server room at the Pentagon Cyber Command was a comfort to most technicians, but to Olivia Chen, it was a distraction that made her job more challenging. As she knelt beside the UPS backup system, sweat beading on her forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning, she had no idea that her routine battery replacement would uncover a vulnerability that would shake the highest levels of national security and prove that sometimes the most critical discoveries come from the people others overlook. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the room as Olivia adjusted her glasses and checked her work order for the third time. Battery replacement for UPS System 7 Delta, Section 12. Just another routine maintenance task that the regular IT staff considered beneath them. Her civilian contractor badge hung from a simple lanyard. The words Technical Support Level 2, printed in a font small enough to be easily ignored by the military personnel who passed through these secure rooms daily. Olivia moved with practiced efficiency, her hands steady as she disconnected the power and began removing the access panel. The room was relatively empty this early in the morning. Just a few analysts hunched over their terminals at the far end, their attention completely absorbed by whatever classified information scrolled across their screens. They hadn't even glanced up when she'd entered, swiping her contractor badge with the resigned expression of someone used to being forgotten as soon as they left a room. The battery unit was larger than standard, a custom design for the specialized equipment in this section. Olivia had seen similar systems during her previous work, though she rarely mentioned those experiences these days. The past was the past, and she preferred it stay buried under layers of routine maintenance work and deliberately unimpressive job titles. A voice broke her concentration, asking how much longer this was going to take as they had a briefing in. "They're in 30 minutes. Olivia didn't look up from her work, explaining it would take about 20 minutes to complete the replacement and run diagnostics, and she would be done before their meeting. The man, Lieutenant Daniel Cooper, based on the nameplate visible in her peripheral vision, made a sound that managed to communicate both impatience and dismissal simultaneously. He complained that these maintenance intervals were getting ridiculous, and it seemed like they always had some contractor in there slowing things down. Olivia replied evenly, her focus remaining on the delicate connections she was disassembling. That battery backups prevent system failures during power fluctuations, and system failures slow things down considerably more than maintenance. The lieutenant made another dismissive sound before walking away, already forgetting about both Olivia and the critical infrastructure she was maintaining. She was used to it. In facilities like this, filled with intelligence analysts, cybersecurity experts, and military specialists with impressive credentials, a civilian contractor replacing batteries barely registered as worthy of notice. As she carefully removed the old battery unit, Olivia noticed something unusual, a small device attached to the power monitoring board that didn't match any component she recognized from the system schematics. It was barely larger than a thumb drive with a miniature antenna barely visible along one edge. Her hands froze momentarily as she processed what she was seeing. The device was positioned to capture data from the power monitoring system, information that could reveal usage patterns, system activity, and potentially even fragments of unencrypted data passing through the power lines. It was a sophisticated surveillance technique that most security sweeps would miss, because it wasn't looking for traditional data interception. Olivia carefully continued her work, giving no outward indication that she'd noticed anything unusual. Her mind, however, was racing through possibilities, threat assessments, and response protocols that someone with her official job description shouldn't have known. At the far end of the room, a group of junior analysts had gathered around a workstation, their conversation drifting toward Olivia as they discussed weekend plans with the casual disregard of people who assumed maintenance workers were essentially furniture. They talked about hitting O'Malley's that night and inviting the new security team, but not the contractors. One laughed, glancing briefly in Olivia's direction, joking about inviting the battery lady to discuss classified intel over beers. The laughter that followed had that particular quality of people performing for each other, each joke needing to be slightly crueler than the last to maintain status in the group. Olivia kept her expression neutral as she continued working, the hidden device now secured in a static-proof bag in her pocket, while she installed the replacement battery. One analyst bet $10 that she used to be a school IT person. Another countered that she'd definitely work at a Best Buy Geek Squad or something, probably got fired for not meeting sales targets. As they continued their casual mockery, Olivia noticed other details around the room with the kind of situational awareness that came from years of training herself to see things others missed. The access badge hanging from Jenkins' belt was positioned where it could easily be photographed by anyone with a concealed camera. Davis had left her workstation logged in while joining the conversation, a basic security violation. The emergency exit door had a maintenance tag that was 3 weeks past the inspection date. Small details that individually meant little, but collectively painted a picture of complacency and security. Vulnerabilities that would horrify anyone who understood the sensitivity of what happened in this facility. But pointing these things out wasn't her job. She was here for the battery, nothing more. Lieutenant Cooper returned with Commander Sarah Williams, the department head whose reputation for exacting standards and technical expertise had earned her both respect and fear throughout the facility. Commander Williams asked if she was Miss Chen, consulting the maintenance log on her tablet, and inquired how much longer on this repair. Olivia replied that she was just finishing the installation and beginning diagnostics with approximately 7 minutes remaining. Commander Williams nodded briskly, requesting that when she was done, she should see her in her office as there was another system she'd like her to examine. The comment drew curious glances from the group of analysts, who clearly couldn't imagine what special attention a battery replacement technician could warrant from someone as senior as Commander Williams. Olivia gave a simple acknowledgement and returned to her work, aware that the atmosphere in the room had shifted subtly. As she completed the installation and ran the standard diagnostic sequence, Olivia maintained her focus on the task at hand, ignoring the speculative whispers from the analysts who had suddenly found her worthy of attention. The diagnostic completed successfully, showing the new battery was functioning properly, though only Olivia knew that she had simultaneously run a second, unauthorized scan looking for additional surveillance devices in the immediate vicinity. She packed her tools with methodical precision, each item returned to its proper place in her kit, no wasted movements, nothing left behind. It was the kind of practiced efficiency that spoke of someone who'd learned that small mistakes could have catastrophic consequences. 15 minutes later, Olivia sat across from Commander Williams, in a small office where the security classification placards on the wall made it clear that this was not a space typically used for meetings with maintenance contractors. Commander Williams stated without preamble that her work order was complete, but she suspected Olivia had found something that wasn't in the job description. Olivia maintained a neutral expression, weighing her options carefully, then acknowledged that she had noticed an unauthorized device connected to the power monitoring system. She had removed it and secured it for proper analysis. Williams observed that she had recognized it as a surveillance device immediately. It wasn't a question. Olivia acknowledged that she had encountered similar technology before, without elaborating. Commander Williams studied her with the penetrating gaze of someone used to extracting information from reluctant sources. She noted that according to Olivia's contractor file, she had been doing routine IT maintenance and battery replacements for the past 3 years. Before that, her employment history showed similar work for various government facilities. Nothing in that history suggested expertise in identifying advanced surveillance equipment. Olivia remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the implicit question. Williams tapped a few commands on her tablet, then turned it to show Olivia what appeared to be a heavily redacted personnel file. This morning, when Olivia swiped her badge, the system flagged an anomaly that triggered a deeper background search. Most of her file was classified above Williams' clearance level, which was interesting given that she had top-secret C clearance, with specialized compartments. The silence stretched between them, neither woman willing to be the first to cross the invisible line between official roles and the reality that both suspected. Olivia said finally, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who'd had this conversation before, that she was just a contractor replacing batteries, and if the system flagged something, it was probably a database error. Williams leaned forward slightly, stating that they both knew that wasn't true. What she didn't know was whether Olivia was there officially in some capacity she wasn't cleared for, or whether she was there because she chose to disappear into the kind of job no one pays attention to. Olivia considered her response carefully. The device she found was sophisticated, manufactured by Koroviv Industries, according to the circuit design, though they deny it. It was designed to capture power usage patterns that could be analyzed to determine what systems were running, when they were most active, and potentially even extract encryption keys through side-channel analysis. It hadn't been in place long. The dust pattern suggested less than 2 weeks. Whoever placed it had internal access and knowledge of the security sweep schedules. The technical assessment, delivered with the casual expertise of someone discussing familiar territory, hung in the air between them. Williams observed quietly that this wasn't something a battery replacement technician would know. Olivia agreed that it wasn't. Williams closed the tablet and sat back in her chair, explaining they had a situation developing. This device Olivia found wasn't the first indication of a potential compromise. They'd detected unusual patterns in their network traffic, nothing definitive enough to trigger formal alarms, but enough to concern those who knew what to look for. Olivia stated flatly that Williams thought she might be connected to it. Williams corrected that she thought Olivia might be able to help them with it, officially or unofficially. The proposition hung in the air between them, an invitation to step out of the shadows and back into the kind of work Olivia had deliberately left behind, the kind of work that had cost her more than anyone in this facility could imagine. Olivia said finally that she replaced batteries. That was her job now. Williams studied her for a long moment, then mentioned that the briefing for senior staff began in 40 minutes. She'd like Olivia to examine the server room on level B before then, specifically the environmental control systems. Officially, she was checking the backup batteries there too. It was a test, both of Olivia's capabilities and her willingness to use them. She could refuse, maintain her cover as a simple maintenance technician, and walk away from whatever was happening in this facility. That would be the safer choice, the one that preserved the quiet anonymity she'd worked so hard to establish. Olivia said instead that she would need different equipment than what she had in her standard kit, making a decision that she suspected she might regret. Williams nodded, unsurprised, stating that whatever she needed would be waiting for her at the security checkpoint. As Olivia left the office, she felt the weight of eyes following her, not just Commander Williams, but the security cameras that tracked her movement through the corridors. Her carefully constructed identity as an unremarkable maintenance contractor was beginning to unravel, and part of her mourned its loss. 3 years of deliberately blending into the background, of being the person others looked through rather than at, potentially sacrificed because she couldn't ignore a surveillance device that someone else would eventually have found anyway. The equipment waiting at the security checkpoint was not the standard issue for maintenance workers. The specialized scanner, signal analyzer, and electronic toolkit were items typically reserved for counterintelligence teams, conducting sensitive sweeps of high-security areas. The guard who provided them to her did so with visible confusion, clearly wondering why a battery replacement contractor needed tools that cost more than his annual salary. 20 minutes later, Olivia knelt beside the environmental control unit in the B-level server room, her scanner methodically sweeping across connections and components with a precision that spoke of years of practice. The regular IT staff had given her a wide berth after seeing her equipment, unsure of her role and unwilling to ask questions that might reveal their own ignorance. The scanner lit up as it passed over a section of the climate control system, not with the alert pattern of a single device like she'd found earlier, but with a cascading series of signals that indicated something far more extensive. Olivia adjusted the settings, narrowing the scan parameters to filter out normal operational signals. What emerged on her display made her breath catch momentarily. Not a single surveillance device, but an entire grid of interconnected sensors embedded throughout the environmental system. A comprehensive monitoring network that could capture data from every server in the room without ever touching the actual network. This wasn't the work of an opportunistic insider or even a standard intelligence operation. This was a sophisticated long-term infiltration that had likely been in place for months, gathering critical intelligence from one of the most secure facilities in the country. The skill and resources required to implement something this complex pointed to a state-level actor with significant capabilities. As she studied the display, mapping the extent of the surveillance grid, Olivia became aware of someone watching her. Major Thomas Reed, the facility's cybersecurity lead, stood a few meters away, his expression a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. He asked if maintenance was running some new type of diagnostic, his tone making it clear he didn't believe that for a moment. Olivia considered her options. She could maintain her cover, offer some plausible explanation about advanced power systems diagnostics, and report her findings only to Commander Williams. That would be the cautious approach, the one that might preserve what remained of her anonymity. Instead, she made a different choice. She told him they had a significant security breach, turning the scanner display so he could see it. An entire surveillance network was embedded in their environmental control system, capturing data from air-gapped servers through side-channel analysis of temperature fluctuations, power consumption, and electromagnetic emissions. Reed's expression shifted from skepticism to alarm as he processed what she was showing him. He insisted that wasn't possible, that they ran comprehensive security sweeps every 72 hours. Olivia explained that their security sweeps were looking for conventional intrusions, network penetrations, unauthorized devices on data lines, wireless transmissions on known frequencies. This system operated completely outside those parameters. She pointed to specific nodes on the display, explaining that these sensors were disguised as standard environmental monitoring components, but they were actually capturing minute variations in temperature and power that correlated to processor activity. Reed demanded to know who she was, because she was definitely not a battery replacement technician. Olivia replied evenly that today, that was exactly what she was, but she also happened to know how this type of surveillance system worked. Before Reed could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility, not the fire or evacuation alerts, but the distinctive pattern that indicated a potential security breach. Emergency lights activated, washing the room in rhythmic pulses of red illumination. The automated announcement stated that security protocol, Delta 7, was now in effect. All systems enter lockdown status, remain at your stations, and await further instructions. Reed's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He checked it, his expression growing more serious. He told Olivia they needed to get to the command center now. Williams wanted her there. As they moved quickly through corridors now filled with alert military personnel securing access points, Reed glanced sideways at Olivia, asking if she knew what Delta 7 meant. She replied automatically that it meant external penetration. Attempt detected, possibly coordinated with internal compromise, then realized her mistake when Reed's eyes narrowed. He noted that protocol designation was updated 3 months ago, and only senior security personnel knew that specific code. Now. Olivia didn't respond, focusing instead on navigating through the controlled chaos of a high-security facility in active lockdown. Around them, security teams were checking credentials, securing sensitive materials, and establishing defensive positions with the practiced efficiency of people who had drilled for this scenario repeatedly. The command center was a flurry of focused activity when they arrived. Senior officers gathered around displays showing security status, network diagrams, and external communications channels. Commander Williams looked up as they entered, her expression revealing nothing as she motioned them to join the central group. Williams announced to the assembled leadership that Miss Chen had discovered something critical, and she believed it was connected to the alert they just received. All eyes turned to Olivia, many reflecting the same question Reed had asked. Who was this contractor, and why was she suddenly at the center of a major security? Olivia felt the weight of their attention, so different from the invisibility she'd cultivated for years. She explained there was an advanced surveillance grid embedded in the environmental control systems, connecting her scanner to the main display so everyone could see what she'd discovered. It was designed to capture data through side-channel analysis, monitoring minute fluctuations in temperature, power consumption, and electromagnetic emissions that correlated to server activities. Colonel James Harrison, the facility director, studied the display with the focused intensity of someone who understood exactly what he was seeing. He noted this explained the anomalous data transfers they'd been detecting. They weren't coming through their networks because they never touched their networks. Williams added that the alarm they just received was triggered by an unusual spike in outbound communications from a maintenance relay station near their facility, likely the collection point for data gathered by this surveillance grid. Harrison demanded to know how long this had been in place. Olivia studied the installation patterns visible in her scans, explaining that based on the integration with the environmental systems and the dust accumulation patterns, it had been there at least 7 months, possibly longer. The revelation sent a ripple of concern through the command staff. 7 months meant that an enormous amount of sensitive intelligence could have been compromised. Colonel Harrison asked if she had detected this during a routine battery replacement, his tone making it clear he didn't believe that for a second. Before Olivia could respond, the main security display flashed with an incoming priority message. The communications officer announced they were receiving reports of similar discoveries at 3 other intelligence facilities within the last hour. Harrison concluded grimly that this was a coordinated compromise, bigger than just their facility. He turned his attention back to Olivia, studying her with new intensity. Commander Williams had told him her contractor file contained some interesting security flags. He asked her directly if she was there in some official capacity that he wasn't aware of. The question hung in the air, forcing Olivia to a decision point she'd been avoiding since finding the first surveillance device. She could continue maintaining her cover, insist she was just a contractor who happened to notice something unusual, and try to extract herself from the escalating situation. Or she could acknowledge what several people in the room already suspected, that her background involved considerably more than battery replacements. Olivia said carefully that she was there exactly as her work order stated, to replace the UPS backup batteries. Her current employment status was exactly what it appeared to be, but her background included experience with this type of surveillance technology. Harrison pressed, asking what agency. Olivia replied evenly that information remained classified and was irrelevant to the current situation. Before Harrison could respond, Major Reed interjected that whatever Ms. Chen's background, she had identified a sophisticated intrusion that their regular security protocols missed. He suggested they focus on containment and assessment before worrying about administrative questions. Harrison considered this for a moment, then nodded briskly and agreed. He asked Olivia if she was willing to assist them in identifying the full extent of this compromise and developing a containment strategy. The question represented exactly what Olivia had been trying to avoid for the past 3 years: being pulled back into the kind of high-stakes security work that had cost her so much. She'd deliberately chosen the quiet anonymity of maintenance work, finding satisfaction in tasks that kept critical systems running without the pressure of national security decisions. Yet here she was, standing in a command center during an active security alert, being asked to step back into a role she'd walked away from for reasons none of these people understood. She said finally that she would help with the technical assessment, but she wasn't returning to operational status in any official capacity. Harrison seemed ready to argue, but Williams intercepted with a raised hand, stating that was acceptable for now. Ms. Chun's expertise was what mattered, not her employment classification. As the command center reorganized to address the emerging crisis, Olivia found herself at the center of a rapidly forming technical response team. Equipment was brought in, access credentials temporarily elevated, and subject matter experts assembled to analyze what was quickly becoming apparent as one of the most sophisticated intelligence collection operations ever discovered within a U.S. facility. Throughout the intense activity, Olivia maintained her methodical approach, systematic, thorough, and precise. She directed scans, analyzed results, and identified components of the surveillance grid with the kind of efficiency that came from extensive experience rather than theoretical knowledge. The junior analyst who had been casually mocking her earlier now watched with undisguised curiosity as she worked directly with the facility's senior leadership, providing assessments and recommendations that were immediately implemented without question. The contrast between their earlier dismissal and current attention wasn't lost on Olivia, though she took no satisfaction from it. 6 hours into the response, with most of the surveillance grid mapped and containment measures in place, Commander Williams found Olivia alone in a small analysis room, reviewing data patterns from the compromised systems. Williams observed that she had managed to identify more of the surveillance components in 6 hours than their entire security team would have found in a month, closing the door to ensure privacy. Olivia replied without looking up from her analysis that it was pattern recognition based on previous experience. Once you know what to look for, it's easier to find. Williams asked where exactly she had gained that previous experience. Olivia finally looked up, meeting Williams' gaze directly, explaining that it was in places that officially don't exist. Doing work that officially never happened, for people who officially didn't ask for it. The cryptic answer hung between them, neither confirmation nor denial of what Williams suspected. Williams said carefully that 3 years ago, a highly classified counterintelligence operation identified and neutralized a sophisticated foreign surveillance network targeting multiple defense facilities. The operation was attributed to a specialized team that was disbanded immediately afterward, with all personnel records sealed under special access protocols. Olivia remained silent, her expression revealing nothing. Williams continued that the techniques used in that operation bore remarkable similarities to how she identified their current situation. Olivia offered neutrally that coincidences happen. Williams replied that not in their line of work. She sat down across from her, explaining that she didn't need Olivia to confirm anything. Her actions today had already told her everything she needed to know. What she wanted to understand was why someone with her obvious capabilities had spent the last 3 years replacing batteries instead of protecting national security assets. The question cut closer to issues Olivia had no intention of discussing, especially not in a secure facility during an active security incident. She said firmly that with respect, her employment choices were her own business. She was helping with this situation because it was the right thing to do, not because she was interested in returning to whatever role Williams thought she used to have. Williams studied her for a long moment, saying that was fair enough, but when this was contained, Colonel Harrison would want answers that were more substantial than what she'd provided so far. Olivia replied that by the time this was contained, she would have completed her contracted work order and moved on to her next assignment. That was how contractor work functioned. Williams countered that, not this time. Her security credentials had already been flagged in the system. Until the situation was resolved, she wasn't going anywhere. The implication was clear, Olivia's carefully constructed anonymity had been compromised, and her attempts to remain uninvolved in high-level security operations had failed. The familiar weight of responsibility she'd tried to leave behind was settling back onto her shoulders, one security breach at a time. Before she could respond, alarms sounded again. A different pattern this time, indicating a potential physical security breach. Both women immediately moved toward the command center, their conversation set aside in favor of addressing the emerging threat. The command center was in controlled chaos when they arrived, security teams mobilizing, surveillance feeds displaying. Multiple areas of the facility, communications officers coordinating responses with external security forces. Major Reed reported as they joined the response team that perimeter sensors detected a breach attempt at the Northeast Service entrance. Surveillance cameras in that sector went offline simultaneously, suggesting a coordinated attack. Colonel Harrison was issuing rapid orders, positioning response teams and implementing lockdown protocols with the efficiency of someone who had prepared for this scenario repeatedly. He stated grimly that this wasn't coincidence. Someone was moving to secure or destroy the surveillance grid they discovered before they could complete their analysis. Olivia studied the facility schematics displayed on the main screen, noting the location of the breach attempt and its proximity to critical. That's where the surveillance grid's primary collection node would be located, based on my analysis. Harrison looked at her sharply. You're certain? The system design follows standard patterns for this type of operation, she confirmed. The collection node would be positioned at the intersection of maximum data flow and minimum security scrutiny. That junction has level 3 security, Reed pointed out. Standard maintenance access only, minimal surveillance because it's considered non-critical infrastructure, which makes it perfect for covert operations, Olivia noted. How many security personnel are stationed in that sector normally? 2 rotating patrols, Harrison replied. But we've deployed a tactical response team there now. The situation was escalating from a cybersecurity incident to a potential physical confrontation, shifting into territory that went far beyond what anyone would expect a battery replacement contractor to be involved with. Yet Olivia found herself automatically assessing tactical options, identifying vulnerabilities, and thinking through response scenarios with the kind of strategic clarity that came from extensive field experience. Your tactical team should approach through Maintenance Tunnel B7, she said, pointing to a route on the schematic that wasn't marked as a primary access path. The standard approach routes would be anticipated and potentially compromised. Several senior officers looked at her with renewed suspicion, clearly wondering how a maintenance contractor would know about security approaches and tactical considerations. Harrison, however, simply evaluated her suggestion on its merits. Reed, redirect the team through B7, he ordered, and get me visual confirmation as soon as possible. As the situation continued to unfold, Olivia found herself drawn deeper into the response planning, her suggestions carrying increasing weight as her expertise became more evident. The careful separation she'd maintained between her current role and her previous experience was eroding with each passing minute, but the immediate security threat took precedence over her personal concerns. The tactical team reported making contact with 3 unauthorized individuals at the environmental control junction. A brief exchange of gunfire followed by the intruders retreating into the maintenance tunnels. Security teams were in pursuit, but the facility's complex infrastructure provided numerous escape routes and hiding places. They'll have a predetermined extraction plan, Olivia observed. Secondary exit, probably through an area we're not watching closely. Harrison studied the facility schematics, identifying potential escape routes. We don't have enough personnel to cover all possible exits, You don't need to, Olivia said, an idea forming. The surveillance grid they installed works both ways. If I can access the control node they were trying to secure, I can trace the command and control signals back to their coordination point. It was a technical approach to what had become a tactical problem, using the enemy's own surveillance infrastructure against them. The kind of asymmetric thinking that had once been Olivia's specialty in operations that remained classified at the highest levels. Can you do that without compromising our security further? Harrison asked, his earlier suspicions about her background now secondary to the immediate threat. Yes, she replied with the quiet confidence of someone who had done similar work before. But I'll need direct access to the environmental control junction in about 10 minutes without interruption. The request would place her directly at the center of an active security incident, far removed from the routine battery replacement work she was officially there to perform. It was another step away from the anonymity she'd cultivated and back toward the kind of high-stakes responsibility she'd walked away from. Harrison made his decision quickly. Williams, take a security team and get Miss Chen to that junction. Reed, coordinate with external security to lock down all potential extraction routes. Let's contain this situation before it escalates further. As Olivia gathered the equipment she would need, she caught Lieutenant Cooper watching her with an expression that mixed confusion and newfound respect. He'd been among those who had dismissed her earlier as just another contractor slowing down their important work. Not just a battery technician after all, huh? He said quietly as she passed. Today, that's exactly what I am, she replied evenly. But sometimes batteries connect to things more important than you realize. The response team moved efficiently through the facility, securing their route as they approached the environmental control junction where the surveillance grid's primary collection node was located. Evidence of the brief confrontation was visible: bullet impacts in the walls, equipment knocked askew, a small blood trail indicating at least one of the intruders had been injured. Commander Williams positioned security personnel at key approaches, while Olivia examined the environmental control systems. Behind the standard monitoring equipment, concealed within the infrastructure that most security personnel would consider mundane and non-critical, she found exactly what she expected: a sophisticated data collection node disguised as routine control hardware. This is it, she confirmed, connecting her diagnostic equipment to interfaces that weren't immediately visible to casual inspection. The primary collection point for their entire surveillance operation. As she worked, Williams watched with the kind of attentive observation that suggested she was memorizing techniques for future reference. You've done this before, she noted quietly. Similar systems, different contexts, Olivia acknowledged, her focus remaining on the delicate electronic surgery she was performing. The principles remained consistent across implementations. The diagnostic equipment Olivia had connected to the surveillance node displayed cascading data streams, encryption protocols, transmission frequencies, and command pathways that would be meaningless to most technical personnel, but revealed a complex operational structure to her trained eye. She worked methodically, bypassing security measures and tracing communication pathways with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. They're using a distributed command architecture, she explained to Williams, who watched intently. Multiple control points, redundant communication channels, automated security responses. This isn't the work of ordinary hackers or even typical intelligence operatives. State-level actors? Williams asked quietly. At minimum. Possibly a coalition effort based on the mixed technical signatures I'm seeing. Olivia adjusted her equipment, following a particularly complex data pathway through multiple routing layers. This level of sophistication suggests resources and expertise that few organizations possess. As she worked, the facility remained in lockdown status. Security teams systematically searching for the intruders who had attempted to access the surveillance node. Regular updates came through Williams' secure communication channel, reporting cleared sectors and secured access points, but no sign of the unauthorized personnel. "They're gone," Olivia said without looking up from her work. "They'll have exfiltrated through pre-established routes using credentials that your security systems recognize as legitimate." "You can't know that," Williams countered. "It's what I would have done," Olivia replied simply. "And whoever designed this surveillance system thinks like I do." The implication hung between them, another hint at Olivia's background that went far beyond routine IT maintenance. Williams chose not to pursue it, focusing instead on the immediate security concerns. After several minutes of intense concentration, Olivia's expression changed subtly, the slight narrowing of eyes and momentary pause in her rhythmic typing that indicated she'd found something significant. "I've located their command and control server," she announced. "It's operating through a series of proxies, but the primary coordination point appears to be within a 5-mile radius of this facility." She connected her equipment to the command center's main display, showing a map overlay with a highlighted area where the control signals originated. "They're managing the surveillance grid from a local position, probably to minimize transmission delays and maximize data collection efficiency." Colonel Harrison studied the map with focused intensity. "That area contains 3 commercial office buildings, a data center, and several residential complexes. Too many potential locations to search without more specific information." "I can narrow it further," Olivia said, returning to her equipment with renewed focus. "The transmission characteristics should provide more precise localization if I can isolate the specific frequency patterns they're using." As she worked, the command center continued coordinating the facility's security response, deployment of additional personnel, and communication with external agencies now involved in what had become a major counterintelligence operation. Through it all, Olivia remained focused on her technical analysis, momentarily forgetting that she was supposed to be a simple battery replacement technician rather than a key figure in neutralizing a sophisticated security breach. 20 minutes later, she had what they needed. "The control center is here," she said, highlighting a specific location on the map display. "Office Suite 712 in the Meridian building." They were operating undercover as a marketing analytics firm called Datasphere Solutions. Harrison immediately began coordinating with external security agencies to investigate the location, while Williams turned to Olivia with the expression of someone whose suspicions had been confirmed. Williams observed quietly that level of signal tracking and localization wasn't something you learn doing battery replacements. Olivia met her gaze steadily, acknowledging that no, it wasn't. Williams continued that when this was over, they needed to have a more detailed conversation about her background and how someone with her obvious capabilities ended up replacing UPS batteries. Olivia countered that when this was over, she would be moving on to her next assignment as outlined in her contract. That was how contractor work functioned. Before Williams could respond, Major Reed approached with an update from the external security teams now mobilizing to investigate the location Olivia had identified. He reported that FBI counterintelligence was taking lead on the Meridian building operation, and they were requesting technical support to ensure proper identification and containment of any systems related to their compromise. Harrison turned to Olivia, noting that given her familiarity with this system, her assistance would be invaluable to the field team. The request represented exactly what Olivia had been trying to avoid, being pulled back into high-stakes operations, where her specialized knowledge placed her at the center of critical national security matters. For 3 years, she had deliberately maintained her cover as an unremarkable maintenance technician, finding satisfaction in work that contributed to important systems without carrying the burden of strategic responsibilities. Now that carefully constructed anonymity was crumbling, and the skills she'd tried to leave behind were once again being recognized and requested by people who had authority to demand her cooperation. Olivia said carefully that her contract specified equipment maintenance within designated facilities. Field operations with FBI counterintelligence fell well outside those parameters. Harrison replied, his tone making it clear he recognized her objection as a technicality rather than a legitimate constraint, that he understood that, but they were dealing with a national security matter that directly threatened this facility, and potentially others. Her expertise could be the difference between successful containment and a catastrophic intelligence failure. The argument was one Olivia had heard before, in different contexts and from different authorities, the appeal to larger responsibilities that transcended contractual limitations or personal preferences. It had been effective earlier in her career, when her sense of duty had overshadowed her awareness of the personal costs such work entailed. She offered as a compromise that she could provide technical guidance remotely. There was no need for her to physically accompany the field team. Before Harrison could respond, the main security display flashed with an incoming priority message. The communications officer announced they were receiving reports of similar surveillance systems discovered at 5 additional defense installations within the last hour. This appeared to be part of a coordinated nationwide intelligence collection operation. The revelation shifted the situation from a localized security breach to something far more significant, a systematic compromise of national security infrastructure. That suggested a level of planning and resources only available to major foreign powers. Harrison turned back to Olivia, his expression now conveying the weight of the expanded threat. He said he understood her reluctance, but this situation had escalated beyond a single facility or a routine security incident. Whatever her reasons for choosing her current role, he was asking her to set them aside temporarily and help them address a critical national security threat. Olivia felt the familiar pressure of being pulled back into the kind of high-stakes work she deliberately walked away from. The weight of responsibility, the knowledge that her decisions and actions would have consequences far beyond what most people ever experienced. She'd spent 3 years carefully constructing a life that kept such burdens at a distance, finding quiet satisfaction in maintenance work that contributed, without requiring her to carry the psychological cost of critical operations. Yet here she was, standing in a command center during a major security incident, being asked to step back into a role she'd abandoned for reasons none of these people understood or appreciated. She said finally that she would provide technical support to the field team for 4 hours. After that, she would return to her regular contract duties, and this incident wouldn't appear in her employment record. Harrison appeared ready to argue for more, but Williams interjected that this was acceptable. Ms. Chun's expertise for even a limited time would significantly enhance their response capabilities. The next several hours passed in a blur of coordinated activity. Olivia provided detailed technical guidance to the FBI field team as they secured the Meridian building location, identifying specific equipment configurations, data storage systems, and security measures they would likely encounter. Her insights proved invaluable, allowing the team to neutralize sophisticated countermeasures that might otherwise have resulted in data destruction or personnel injuries. The operation successfully secured 3 individuals, technical specialists, working for what preliminary evidence suggested was a foreign intelligence service operating under commercial cover. More importantly, they recovered intact server systems containing data collected from multiple compromised facilities, providing crucial intelligence about what information had been targeted and potentially exposed. Throughout the operation, Olivia maintained her focus on the technical aspects, careful to avoid being drawn into operational planning or strategic discussions that went beyond her agreed-upon support role. When questioned about how she could predict the surveillance system's specific configurations or security protocols, she deflected with technical explanations rather than revelations about her background. 4 hours after agreeing to assist, exactly as specified, Olivia informed Commander Williams that her support period had concluded and she would be returning to her regular duties. Williams pointed out as they stood in a quiet corner of the command center that the situation wasn't fully resolved. The field team was still processing the recovered systems, and they hadn't identified all potential compromises at other facilities. Olivia replied evenly that others could continue that work. She had provided the technical foundation they needed to proceed effectively. Williams studied her with the penetrating gaze of someone piecing together a complex puzzle, noting that most people with her abilities would be seeking recognition, advancement, prestigious positions that acknowledge their expertise. Yet she had deliberately chosen anonymity and routine maintenance work. That was an unusual career trajectory. Olivia said simply that not everyone measures success by the same standards. Williams agreed, but noted that most people don't walk away from the kind of specialized knowledge and experience she clearly possessed without significant reasons. The observation came closer to personal territory than Olivia was comfortable discussing, especially in a secure facility during an active security incident. Her reasons for choosing her current path were her own, shaped by experiences that remained classified, and consequences that continued to influence her decisions years later. Olivia said firmly that with respect, her career choices were her business. She had fulfilled her agreement to assist with this situation, and now she was returning to her contracted duties. Williams seemed about to press further, but was interrupted by Major Reed approaching with an update from the field team. He reported they had begun analyzing the recovered servers. Preliminary findings suggested data collection from at least 12 different secure facilities over a period of 9 months. The scope was significantly larger than they initially estimated. The news only reinforced Olivia's determination to extract herself from the operation. Larger scope meant expanded investigation, increased resources, and extended timelines, all pulling her further from the quiet anonymity she'd worked so hard to establish. She said, gathering her equipment, that if they would excuse her, she had 3 more UPS systems scheduled for battery replacement that day. The statement, so incongruous given the high-stakes counterintelligence operation unfolding around them, drew a look of disbelief from Reed and a knowing nod from Williams. Williams replied that, of course, security would escort her to her next work location. As Olivia prepared to leave the command center, Colonel Harrison approached for a final word. He wanted to personally thank her for her assistance that day. Her expertise was instrumental in identifying and containing a significant national security threat. She replied with deliberate ambiguity that she was just doing her job, technically accurate while revealing nothing about which job she was referring to. Harrison continued that he had been in military intelligence for 27 years, and he had learned to recognize exceptional capabilities when he saw them. Whatever her reasons for her current role, he respected her right to those choices. But he also wanted her to know that talents like hers were rare and valuable. If she ever reconsidered her current career path, there would be a place for her in operations. The offer was presented respectfully, without the pressure or manipulation that often accompanied such recruitment attempts. Harrison was acknowledging her expertise without demanding she explain or justify her current position. "Thank you, Colonel," Olivia said simply. "But I find my current work satisfying in ways that aren't immediately obvious to others." As she walked through the facility toward her next scheduled maintenance location, escorted by a security officer who now treated her with a deference completely different from the morning's casual dismissal, Olivia reflected on how quickly her carefully constructed anonymity had been compromised. One surveillance device discovered during a routine battery replacement had cascaded into a situation that exposed capabilities she deliberately kept hidden for 3 years. The skills and knowledge she developed in classified operations, expertise that had once defined her professional identity, had been recognized by people with the authority and interest to pull her back into that world. The junior analysts who had mockingly called her "battery lady" that morning now watched her pass with expressions of curious respect, having witnessed her central role in the command center during a major security incident. The shift in their perception was exactly what Olivia had been avoiding, the recognition that inevitably led to questions, attention, and requests for capabilities she'd chosen to leave behind. 2 hours later, as she completed the final battery replacement on her day's schedule, Olivia was interrupted by Lieutenant Cooper, the same officer who had dismissed her work as an inconvenience that morning. "Miss Chen," he said, his earlier condescension replaced by awkward respect, "Commander Williams asked me to provide you with this." He handed her a sealed envelope with security markings indicating classified content. "Thank you, Lieutenant," she replied, continuing her equipment packing without immediately opening the envelope. Cooper hesitated, clearly struggling with the cognitive dissonance between his morning perception of her as an unremarkable maintenance technician and the afternoon reality of someone who had demonstrated expertise that impressed senior intelligence officers. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. "This morning, my colleagues and I made assumptions about you based on your job title. Those assumptions were clearly wrong, and our comments were unprofessional." Olivia paused in her work, considering his apology. She could dismiss it, maintain her professional distance, and leave him to process his misconceptions without her input. But there was a teaching opportunity here that extended beyond this specific interaction. "Lieutenant, the problem isn't that you underestimated me personally," she said quietly. "The problem is that you automatically assume maintenance work indicates limited capabilities or value. Every person who keeps this facility functioning, from the custodial staff to the security officers to the HVAC technicians, contributes to the mission in ways you might not immediately recognize." Cooper absorbed her words with surprising thoughtfulness. "I hadn't considered it that way before." "Most people don't," Olivia acknowledged. "But in secure facilities like this, everyone with access has been vetted, trained, and trusted with national security information. The person replacing batteries today might have been doing something very different yesterday, and might be doing something even more important tomorrow." She finished packing her tools with the same methodical precision she'd maintained throughout the day, each item in its proper place, no wasted motion, nothing left behind. The most dangerous assumption in security work is thinking you understand someone's capabilities based on their current assignment or apparent status. After Cooper left, Olivia opened the classified envelope. Inside was a brief message from Commander Williams, along with a security access card that bore Olivia's photo but a different name and clearance level. The message was simple: "Your technical support today saved lives and protected critical national security assets. This temporary credential will give you access to secure briefing room 47B at 07:00 tomorrow. I believe you'll find the discussion relevant to your interests, both current and former. Attendance is optional but recommended." Olivia stared at the credential for a long moment, recognizing it as both an invitation and a confirmation. Williams had connected enough dots to identify at least part of Olivia's background, accessing compartmented information that revealed her former role in counterintelligence operations similar to today's incident. The secure credential represented a choice. She could attend the briefing, potentially being drawn further back into the world of classified operations and high-stakes security work, or she could maintain her boundary, complete her current contract, and move on to her next maintenance assignment with her anonymity at least partially intact. As she left the facility that evening, passing through security checkpoints where officers now nodded with respectful recognition rather than casual indifference, Olivia contemplated the implications of her day's involvement. The surveillance system she'd helped identify and neutralize had likely been collecting sensitive information for months, compromising operations and potentially endangering personnel at multiple facilities. Her expertise, developed through years of classified work she'd walked away from, had proven crucial in containing that threat. The skills she'd tried to leave behind had protected people and information in ways that routine maintenance work never could, regardless of how competently performed. That reality confronted her with uncomfortable questions about responsibility, capability, and choice. If she possessed knowledge and abilities that could address serious security threats, did she have an obligation to use them, regardless of the personal cost? Or was she entitled to choose a quieter path, one that protected her from the psychological burden of high-stakes operations? Back in her modest apartment, far removed from the secure facilities and classified operations that had defined her former life, Olivia placed the temporary security credential on her kitchen table and stared at it while preparing a simple dinner. The plastic card represented a potential return to work that had once given her purpose and recognition, but had ultimately extracted a price she'd decided was too high to continue paying. Her phone rang, a secure line that very few people had access to and that hadn't been used in nearly 3 years. The caller ID showed only a numeric code, but Olivia immediately recognized its significance. "Chun," she answered, her voice automatically shifting to the professional tone she'd used in her previous role. "It's Peterson," came the familiar voice of her former handler. "I understand you had an interesting day." Olivia wasn't surprised. That news of her involvement had reached him so quickly. The counterintelligence community operated on information networks that transcended official channels, especially when it involved someone with her particular background. "Just a routine battery replacement that became complicated," she replied, deliberately understating the situation. Peterson's short laugh carried a mixture of amusement and knowing recognition. That's one way to describe identifying and neutralizing one of the most sophisticated surveillance operations we've encountered in the past decade. The FBI team leader mentioned that your technical guidance was instrumental in securing the control center before they could destroy their systems. "They had good field personnel," Olivia deflected. "I just provided some technical context." "Technical context that only someone with your specific experience could have provided," Peterson countered. "You recognize the surveillance system because you've encountered similar technology before, in operations that remain classified at levels most people in that room couldn't access." The observation hung between them, neither question nor accusation, but a statement of fact that acknowledged their shared history in work that officially didn't exist. "What do you want, David?" Olivia asked directly, bypassing the conversational preliminaries. "Commander Williams has scheduled a briefing tomorrow morning regarding the broader implications of today's discovery," he replied. "Given your involvement and expertise, your participation would be valuable." "I've already received the invitation," Olivia noted. "And as the credential clearly states, attendance is optional." "Technically, yes," Peterson acknowledged. "But we both know this surveillance operation is likely connected to matters you were involved with before you changed career paths. Your insights could help us understand those connections more clearly." The implication was subtle but clear. The current situation might be linked to operations from her previous work, potentially even threatening to expose classified activities that remain sensitive years later. It was a more sophisticated approach than Colonel Harrison's appeal to patriotic duty, leveraging her sense of responsibility for past operations rather than general national security concerns. "I replace batteries now, David," she said firmly. "That's my job, my choice, and my contribution. I assisted today because the situation directly affected a facility where I was working. That doesn't mean I'm available for broader counterintelligence consultations." Peterson was quiet for a moment, respecting her position even if he disagreed with it. "I understand your reasons for walking away, Olivia. Better than most. But sometimes our past work doesn't stay in the past, no matter how much we might want it to." The statement touched on concerns Olivia had been considering since discovering the first surveillance device that her former work might have connections to current security threats, creating obligations that transcended her personal preferences for anonymity and routine. "One briefing," she said finally. "I'll attend tomorrow and provide whatever technical insights I can offer. After that, I return to my regular contract duties with no further expectations or obligations." "That's fair," Peterson agreed. "And, for what it's worth, I respect the boundaries you've established. Not everyone manages to walk away from this kind of work successfully." After ending the call, Olivia returned to her simple dinner preparation, the familiar domestic routine, contrasting sharply with the day's high-stakes security operations. 3 years ago, she had deliberately chosen this quieter path, work that contributed without requiring her to carry the weight of decisions with potential strategic consequences or moral ambiguities. Today had been a stark reminder of the world she'd left behind, where her specialized knowledge made her valuable in ways that transcended ordinary professional metrics. The skills and experience she'd developed in classified operations remained intact, regardless of her current job, title, or daily responsibilities. As she ate her dinner, Olivia contemplated the temporary security credential still sitting on her table, the plastic card representing a potential return to work that had once defined her professional identity. Tomorrow's briefing would likely pull her further into the investigation of a sophisticated surveillance operation with national security implications. The question was whether she could maintain the boundaries she'd established between her former expertise and her chosen current path, or whether events would continue drawing her back into a world she deliberately left behind. Either way, her carefully constructed anonymity had been compromised, and the skills she'd tried to keep in her past had become relevant to her present in ways she couldn't ignore. She would attend the briefing, provide whatever insights her experience offered, and then attempt to return to the quiet routine of maintenance work that had given her peace for the past 3 years. Whether that return would be possible remained to be seen, but Olivia was determined to maintain the separation between who she had been and who she had chosen to become. The skills remained, the capabilities hadn't diminished, but the choice of how and when to use them belonged to her alone, a principle she would defend regardless of the pressure to return to her former role. Sometimes the most important expertise was knowing when not to use your capabilities, regardless of how exceptional they might be. The secure briefing room at the Pentagon Cyber Command was markedly different from the server spaces where Olivia normally worked. Instead of the constant hum of cooling systems and the utilitarian functionality of maintenance areas, this space projected authority and purpose: polished conference table, advanced display systems, and security features that went far beyond standard classified areas. Olivia arrived precisely at 0700, using the temporary credential to pass through multiple security checkpoints, where officers now greeted her with a respect entirely different from yesterday's indifference. She had deliberately worn the same maintenance uniform as the previous day, a small but meaningful choice that maintained continuity with her chosen identity rather than adapting to this more formal environment. Commander Williams was already present, along with Colonel Harrison and representatives from several intelligence agencies whose insignia Olivia recognized from her previous work. Peterson sat near the far end of the table, his presence confirming that this briefing extended beyond the immediate security incident into areas with broader implications. "Miss Chen, thank you for joining us," Williams said, gesturing to an open seat. "Your insights will be valuable as we assess the full scope of this compromise." Olivia took the indicated seat, nodding acknowledgement but offering no comment. Her posture, alert but slightly reserved, communicated her position clearly: present as requested, but maintaining professional distance. As the room filled with senior security personnel, Olivia noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. When Major Reed entered with Lieutenant Cooper and several of the junior analysts who had casually mocked her the previous morning, Their expressions now showed a mixture of curiosity and respect, as they noted her presence at the main table rather than in the support staff seating around the perimeter. Once the room was secure, Colonel Harrison began the briefing with a summary of the previous day's discoveries: the sophisticated surveillance grid embedded in environmental systems, the coordinated physical breach attempt, and the successful raid on the control center in the Meridian building. Analysis of recovered materials confirms our worst suspicions, he continued, displaying technical schematics on the main screen. This operation was a coordinated multi-facility intelligence collection effort, targeting classified research programs across several agencies. Preliminary attribution suggests state-level actors with advanced technical capabilities. The briefing continued with various specialists presenting aspects of the compromise, the technical implementation, security vulnerabilities exploited, specific information targeted, and potential damage assessment. Throughout these presentations, Olivia remained silent, observing but not contributing, maintaining her role as invited consultant rather than active participant. Eventually, Williams directed the discussion toward the surveillance technology itself. The technical sophistication of this operation exceeds standard intelligence collection methods. Ms. Chun's recognition of the system design was crucial to our rapid response. Perhaps she could provide context on similar technologies she's encountered previously. All eyes turned to Olivia, the invitation clearly extending beyond simple technical analysis into areas that would reveal aspects of her background she'd kept carefully concealed for the past 3 years. The surveillance system uses principles similar to technologies developed for passive intelligence collection. She began carefully, sharing relevant information without directly confirming her previous involvement with such systems. The core methodology, using environmental monitoring to capture side-channel data, has been refined over the past decade to extract information from air-gapped systems that would otherwise be secure from network-based intrusions. She explained the technical foundations of the surveillance grid, providing insights that would help the security teams understand what they were dealing with while avoiding specific references to classified operations where she might have encountered such technologies. What makes this implementation particularly concerning, she continued, is the integration level within standard infrastructure components. The sensors are disguised as routine environmental monitoring equipment, using power and data pathways that exist in every secure facility without triggering standard security protocols. As she spoke, Olivia noticed the junior analysts who had dismissed her the previous day now listening with focused attention, their expressions showing the cognitive adjustment of people whose assumptions were being fundamentally challenged. Lieutenant Cooper, who had apologized for his earlier dismissal, seemed particularly affected by the contrast between his initial perception and the reality of her expertise. Based on manufacturing signatures and implementation techniques, she concluded, this surveillance system shows characteristic patterns associated with operations from the Eastern European technology sector, though with modifications that suggest collaboration with Asian development methodologies. The technical assessment, delivered with the casual authority of someone intimately familiar with classified surveillance technologies, shifted the briefing's dynamics. Specialists from various agencies began asking more detailed questions, clearly recognizing that Olivia's knowledge went far beyond what her contractor badge suggested. Peterson eventually steered the discussion toward more sensitive territory. Ms. Chun, the implementation patterns you've identified share striking similarities with systems targeted during Operation Black Mirror 3 years ago. Are you able to comment on potential connections? The question represented exactly the line Olivia had been determined not to cross: direct acknowledgement of classified operations that officially didn't exist and that weren't disclosed in her current employment records. Operation Black Mirror remained highly classified, a counterintelligence effort that had identified and neutralized a sophisticated foreign surveillance network before dissolving into the kind of administrative smoke that obscured the most sensitive government activities. "I'm not in a position to comment on classified operations, Mr. Peterson," she replied evenly. "My observations are based solely on the technical characteristics of the system discovered yesterday." Peterson nodded, accepting her boundary while, having accomplished his real purpose, confirming to everyone in the room that her knowledge came from direct involvement with highly classified counterintelligence operations. The briefing continued for another hour, with detailed discussions of containment strategies, ongoing investigations at other compromised facilities, and coordination with international partners who might be experiencing similar intrusions. Throughout, Olivia provided technical insights when directly questioned, but maintained her position as consultant rather than operational participant. As the briefing concluded, Colonel Harrison addressed the group with the authoritative tone of someone making final decisions. "Based on our assessment, this compromise represents a significant national security incident requiring coordinated response across multiple agencies. We'll be establishing a joint task force to continue the investigation and implement security measures at all potentially affected facilities." He turned toward Olivia. "Ms. Chen's technical expertise has proven invaluable in understanding this threat. I'm requesting that she be temporarily assigned to the task force as a technical consultant, with appropriate security clearances reinstated to facilitate her contributions." The proposal was presented as a straightforward operational decision, but Olivia immediately recognized it for what it really was: an attempt to pull her back into classified work under the justification of the current emergency. Her carefully constructed separation between past capabilities and present choices was being directly challenged by someone with the authority to override her preferences. "Colonel," she said carefully, "while I appreciate the consideration, my current contract specifies equipment maintenance duties. Technical consultation for a joint task force would represent a significant departure from those responsibilities." "I understand your position," Harrison replied. "However, national security priorities sometimes require adjustment of standard assignments. Your expertise is uniquely valuable to this investigation, and we have the authority to modify contractor assignments during security incidents." The statement was technically accurate but represented exactly the kind of institutional pressure Olivia had been avoiding for 3 years, the assumption that her specialized knowledge created obligations that superseded her personal choices about how to use her capabilities. Before she could respond, Peterson interjected with a more nuanced approach. "Perhaps a compromise position would be appropriate. Ms. Chen could provide technical consultation on a limited basis, focusing specifically on the surveillance technology, while maintaining her primary responsibilities. This would respect both operational needs and personal boundaries." The suggestion offered a potential middle path, contributing her expertise without being fully pulled back into the classified world she'd deliberately left behind. It wasn't ideal from either perspective, but it acknowledged the reality that her specialized knowledge was directly relevant to a significant security threat while preserving some measure of her chosen separation. Olivia considered the proposal, weighing her desire to maintain boundaries against the legitimate security concerns presented by the surveillance operation. The sophisticated system she discovered had likely been collecting sensitive information for months, potentially compromising operations and endangering personnel at multiple facilities. Her expertise could help address that threat in ways that few others could match. "I can provide technical consultation 3 days per week," she said finally, "limited to assessment of the surveillance technology and containment strategies. My primary contract duties would continue on remaining days, and this arrangement would terminate upon conclusion of the immediate security incident." Harrison appeared ready to push for more, but Williams intervened with a raised hand. "That arrangement seems reasonable, Colonel. Miss Chen's expertise, even on a part-time basis, will significantly enhance our response capabilities. As the meeting adjourned and personnel began filing out, Olivia remained seated, processing the implications of the commitment she'd just made. After 3 years of deliberately maintaining separation from her former work, she had agreed to step partially back into that world, leveraging capabilities she'd tried to leave behind to address a legitimate security threat. Lieutenant Cooper approached hesitantly, his earlier confidence replaced by genuine respect. "Miss Chen, I wanted to thank you again for your work yesterday. Several of us were discussing how differently things might have gone if you hadn't identified that surveillance system." Olivia acknowledged his comment with a simple nod. Sometimes the right person happens to be in the right place at the right time. "It wasn't just being in the right place," Cooper countered. "It was having the right knowledge and being willing to use it when needed. That made the difference." As he walked away, Olivia reflected on how thoroughly perceptions had shifted. In the span of a single day, the same people who had casually dismissed her as Battery Lady now recognized capabilities they hadn't imagined, fundamentally changing how they would interact with her and others in similar roles. Peterson was the last to approach, waiting until the room had cleared before taking the seat beside her. "That was a reasonable compromise," he observed. "Though I suspect Harrison would have preferred full-time reassignment." "Harrison doesn't understand my reasons for choosing my current role," Olivia replied. "Few people do." "I understand better than most," Peterson said quietly. Operation Black Mirror left marks on everyone involved. Walking away was a legitimate response to what happened there. The reference to their shared past hung between them, acknowledgement of experiences that had shaped both their careers in different ways. Where Olivia had chosen to leave that world behind, Peterson had remained, carrying different lessons from the same classified events. "The surveillance system we discovered yesterday bears striking similarities to what we encountered during Black Mirror," he continued. "Not just technical parallels, but operational patterns that suggest potential connections. That's why your expertise is particularly valuable in this investigation." Olivia understood the implication that her former work might have direct relevance to current security threats, creating a more personal connection than general national security concerns. It was a more compelling argument for her involvement than abstract appeals to duty or authority. "I'll contribute what I can," she said simply. "But I'm not returning to operational status, regardless of the connections to previous work." Peterson nodded, accepting her boundary while having accomplished his primary objective, securing her participation in addressing a threat she was uniquely qualified to understand. As Olivia left the briefing room, navigating back through security checkpoints toward her scheduled maintenance assignments for the day, she reflected on how quickly her carefully constructed separation had been compromised. One surveillance device, discovered during a routine battery replacement, had cascaded into commitments that would once again place her specialized knowledge at the center of classified operations. Yet there was also a certain relief in acknowledging capabilities she'd been deliberately suppressing. The skills and expertise she'd developed through years of classified work remained intact, regardless of her current job title or daily responsibilities. Using those capabilities to address legitimate threats didn't necessarily mean returning to the life she'd chosen to leave behind. 3 days later, Olivia found herself in a secure analysis facility, examining components of the surveillance grid recovered from multiple compromised locations. The technical assessment work engaged parts of her mind that had been dormant during years of routine maintenance, the analytical problem-solving and pattern recognition that had once defined her professional identity. Working alongside specialists from various intelligence agencies, she provided insights that connected technical implementations to potential sources, identifying signature elements that helped attribute the operation to specific foreign entities. Her contributions accelerated the investigation significantly, confirming Peterson's assertion that her expertise was uniquely valuable to understanding the threat. During a break in the analysis work, Olivia found herself sharing a quiet moment with Dr. Eleanor Vance, a senior technical specialist whose reputation in counterintelligence circles matched Olivia's own from her previous career. "Your analysis of the signal processing algorithms was impressive," Vance noted. "Few people would have recognized those pattern matching techniques or their implications for quantum-resistant encryption." "I encountered similar methodologies previously," Olivia acknowledged without elaborating. Vance studied her with the evaluative gaze of someone assessing both technical capabilities and personal motivations. "You know, most people with your level of expertise are running specialized departments, heading classified research programs, or leading operational teams. Yet you chose battery replacement work. That's an unusual career trajectory." The observation echoed what Williams had noted earlier, but coming from a technical peer rather than a military commander, it carried different implications. "Not everyone measures success by the same standards," Olivia replied, using the same response she'd given Williams. "True," Vance agreed. "But specialized knowledge like yours is rare, and typically cultivated within institutional frameworks that don't easily allow people to simply walk away. Your choice suggests either extraordinary independence or significant personal reasons that outweighed professional advancement." The assessment was uncomfortably perceptive, touching on aspects of Olivia's decision that she rarely discussed, even with those who knew her background. Her choice to leave classified work hadn't been made lightly or without consequences, both professional and personal. "Operation Black Mirror changed my perspective on certain aspects of the work," Olivia said carefully, acknowledging what Peterson had already referenced while revealing nothing about the classified details. "I found that my technical capabilities could be applied in different contexts, with different measures of impact and success." Vance nodded thoughtfully. "I've known several exceptional people who made similar choices after particularly difficult operations. The capabilities remain, but the willingness to operate in certain environments changes. It's not about skill, but about where and how we choose to apply it." The conversation touched on something Olivia had been contemplating since discovering the surveillance device, the distinction between having capabilities and choosing when and how to use them. Her technical expertise hadn't diminished during years of maintenance work. She had simply directed it toward different applications with different consequences. "The challenge," Vance continued, "is that specialized knowledge creates its own imperatives. When you can see threats that others miss, recognize patterns that others don't understand, there's an inherent responsibility that's difficult to simply set aside." The observation articulated the tension Olivia had been feeling since agreeing to consult on the investigation, the pull between her desire to maintain separation from her former work and the recognition that her capabilities could address threats in ways few others could match. "Responsibility doesn't necessarily dictate role," Olivia countered. "There are many ways to contribute expertise beyond traditional operational positions." "True," Vance acknowledged. "Finding the right balance is the real challenge, using capabilities without being defined or consumed by them." As the analysis work continued over subsequent days, Olivia maintained her boundary between technical consultation and operational involvement, providing insights on the surveillance technology, while avoiding broader intelligence discussions. She continued her regular maintenance duties on alternate days, deliberately preserving the connection to work that had given her satisfaction and stability for the past 3 years. The junior analyst who had mockingly called her "battery lady" now treated her with a respect bordering on deference, having witnessed her central role in a major counterintelligence operation. Cooper, who had apologized for his earlier dismissal, made a point of acknowledging her regardless of which role she was fulfilling on any given day. "The thing I still don't understand," he said during one such encounter, "is how someone with Your obvious expertise ended up doing maintenance work in the first place. It seems like your capabilities would be in high demand for more specialized positions. Olivia considered his question thoughtfully. Unlike the dismissive assumptions of their first meeting, this represented genuine curiosity about choices he couldn't easily comprehend from his perspective. Lieutenant, imagine you've spent years developing skills for high-stakes operations, where mistakes have significant consequences, she replied. Each decision carries weight that affects others in ways you can't always predict or control. Eventually, you might reach a point where you want to contribute without carrying that level of responsibility, to use your capabilities in context where the outcomes are more predictable and the costs more manageable. Cooper absorbed her words with surprising thoughtfulness. I hadn't considered it from that perspective before. We tend to assume everyone wants advancement, recognition, positions with more authority and responsibility. Most people do, Olivia acknowledged. But there's value in work that contributes without requiring the psychological cost of high-stakes decision-making. Battery replacements might seem mundane, but they keep critical systems functioning during power disruptions. That contribution matters, even if it doesn't come with classified briefings or executive authority. The conversation represented a different kind of education than the technical insights Olivia had been providing to the investigation team, a perspective on value, contribution, and choice that challenged conventional assumptions about career, progression, and success metrics. As the investigation progressed, the Joint Task Force identified additional compromised facilities, expanded the attribution evidence linking the surveillance operation to specific foreign entities, and developed containment strategies to address vulnerabilities across multiple security systems. Olivia's technical consultation proved invaluable throughout, confirming Peterson's assertion that her expertise was uniquely suited to understanding and countering the threat. 2 weeks into the investigation, a breakthrough came from unexpected direction. Olivia's analysis of component manufacturing signatures identified a specific production facility in Eastern Europe that supplied critical elements for the surveillance grid. This connection, when combined with intelligence from other sources, provided the final attribution evidence needed to confirm state sponsorship of the operation. The discovery led to a high-level briefing where senior officials from multiple agencies reviewed the evidence and discussed response options. Despite her technical contribution, Olivia deliberately limited her participation to presenting the manufacturing analysis, avoiding the strategic and political discussions that followed. As the briefing concluded, Peterson approached with the kind of expression that suggested significant developments. Your manufacturing analysis was the missing piece we needed, he said. The attribution is now conclusive enough for diplomatic and intelligence responses. I'm glad it was helpful, Olivia replied, already gathering her materials to return to her regular duties. There's something else, Peterson continued, his tone shifting slightly. The task force is transitioning from investigation to longer-term security implementation. Colonel Harrison is recommending the establishment of a specialized technical unit to develop countermeasures against this type of surveillance technology. He wants you to lead it. The proposal represented exactly what Olivia had been avoiding, not just temporary consultation during an emergency, but a permanent return to classified work in a leadership position that would fully leverage her specialized knowledge while completely abandoning the separation she'd established. I'm not interested, David, she said firmly. My agreement was for limited technical consultation during the immediate investigation. That doesn't include transitioning to a permanent position. I understand your position, Peterson replied. But this is an opportunity to address these threats systematically, to develop protections that would prevent future compromises similar to what Operation Black Mirror encountered. Your expertise would be central to that effort. The appeal was carefully crafted to leverage her sense of responsibility for past operations and their connections to current threats, more sophisticated than simple patriotic duty or institutional authority. but still an attempt to pull her back into a world she deliberately left behind. My answer remains the same, Olivia stated. I'll complete my agreed consultation period, but I'm not returning to operational status or accepting a leadership position, regardless of how it's framed. Peterson studied her for a moment, then nodded with reluctant acceptance. Harrison, won't be satisfied with that answer, but I'll convey your position. For what it's worth, I respect your boundary, even if I don't fully agree with your choice. As Olivia left the briefing room, navigating back through security checkpoints toward her next maintenance assignment, she reflected on the continuing tension between her specialized capabilities and her chosen path. The surveillance investigation had demonstrated that her technical expertise remained valuable in addressing sophisticated threats, but it had also reinforced her determination to maintain separation between who she had been and who she had chosen to become. The skills remained. The capabilities hadn't diminished. But the choice of how and when to use them belonged to her alone, a principle she would continue to defend regardless of institutional pressure or appeals to larger responsibilities. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.